So, good morning, everybody.
Good morning. We got a good turnout
And
here this morning. I'm excited for this one, Jim, as an agent, writing addendums, right, is the one thing that our clients look for us, right, to protect them. So pretty awesome to have an attorney with your kind of experience, Jim, here to do this master class. We still got people filing in. We got more people filing in right now. So
there's a couple of parts to this class. The first part of this class is going to be persuasive communication, right? And the second part of this class is once you get the communication down and you've got everybody seeing things your way, then the second part of this class is going to be how to draft the addendum. But the first part of the class is the art, right? The addendum is pretty mechanical once you get the terms down. And if you do the first part right, you're going to reveal all the facts, you're going to reveal all the laws, you're going to have no problem writing the addendum. But the real trick is writing the first part, getting the other side to see it your way.
yeah.
So,
You
oh,
want, why don't I do an intro, Jim? You want me to
yeah.
do the intro so everybody knows who you are? Okay, guys, welcome everybody to the webinar. It's a bi-weekly webinar. Jim and myself host. My name is Ryan Poole. Okay, I'm an agent like yourselves, been in the trenches for over 20 years. Love the business, love making positive impact in people's lives and doing real estate. I'm also the founder of RealTrade, which is an online marketplace and social media platform for real estate. Jim likes to say we're the home of the double dip. We do little things different than Zillow and other large marketplaces. Is you create a profile RealTrade, we import your listings, and you're the point of contact. So I tell everybody check that out if you can. You just Google RealTrade or go to realtrade.io and check that out. But I'm really excited here to co-host this with Jim. Jim's an attorney. He's also the founder of New Path Title and the awesome closing software Title Leap, and something amazing that he offers agents called Title Advance, which he can speak to. But we're excited to host this. We want to add value to agents. One of Jim's favorite sayings is iron sharpens iron. So we learn from all us other agents and help make our industry better. And that's why we're here. So go ahead, Jim. Why don't you do a quick intro for yourself?
Attorney Jim Brown, been practicing 20 years, been doing real estate my whole life, 40 years. Um, my favorite part of my work week is preparing for and giving these sessions and talking to agents. So you guys, the stuff that you call me about, the issues that you text me about 24/7, these are the things that we do more podcasts on, and you guys get value and I get value. So when Ryan says iron sharpens iron, that's truly what I mean. Like you guys call me about your issues and I learn about what your needs are, and then we can write cool outlines on how to deal with everything. You will not hear the stuff we talk about on this podcast anyplace else. Everything we talk about is unique content presented from real life events. It's not stuff that we pulled out of canned discussions other places. Um, we're going to try to keep this to 30 or 45 minutes. If you guys want to go longer, we can, but I want to keep it short and tight, 45 minutes at the max. If you turn on your camera, I can always read your faces, and then I know that when it's resonating and when it's not, and it makes for a better session. If you don't want to turn it on, there's no reason that you have to. Question and answer at the end. I see you, John Sperry. Let's see your face. I'm only kidding. Um, we'll save some questions and answers for the end, and we're also going to go over some time-saving tools that everybody can dip into that Ryan and I provide. We'll save that for the end. And again, text me 24/7. You can get a hold of me at newpathtitle.com on 24/7 attorney support. You text me your issue, we'll figure out the answer, whether I'm the closing agent in your deal or not. All right, Ryan, you got anything you want to say before we jump into it?
No, I'm excited. I was saying here at the beginning, here where people are filing in, as a real estate agent, this is the one thing that your clients look up to you in. Is there's some kind of issue and you have to write an addendum, right? I mean, that's something that they want to know, that you're protecting them, that you have their best interests at heart, and all those good things. So this is really important, something that you can showcase your talent and your experience and expertise as an agent. So this is a good topic, Jim.
No, it's a good point you make, right? We all have contracts, we all have the forms, the standard forms that we can get. But an addendum and persuasive writing is creative stuff we bring to the table. So if we do that well, we distinguish ourselves from the other agent. And how many times have you been in a situation where you were just looking for that key thing to say to just bury the other side and get through the minutia and get to the goal? I'm going to give you those tools to make that happen. All right.
Awesome.
No, it's an unfair advantage, you
It
guys.
is. No, I mean, writing addendums is huge. I mean, it's a big part of real estate for
Can
sure.
you see the screen?
Yep.
All right. Is it legible or is it too small? Should I go to one screen? Should I go to
No, I can see both screen. I see you got the contract on the right and then the rest on
my
the element
outline?
on the left. There you go.
All right. So, communicating powerfully and writing the best addendums is what we're talking about today. And being an effective and most of all persuasive communicator is key to being a productive real estate agent. Here are two tools to make you stand out as an agent. Communicating effectively when things are easy is when things are good is easy for almost everybody. But communicating effectively and getting the other side to see it your way when things are strained, that's an art. IRAC, which we'll go over in a minute, is a tool you'll use to get the other side to see it your way when things are good, and more importantly, when things get strained. And so now you've used IRAC and you've cured your transactional meltdown, and now everybody sees it your way. You need a well-written addendum to memorialize those terms. A good addendum gets the parties to the new goal with as few words as possible, leaves no event to chance, and keeps you out of hot water should things go south. All this stuff is in on the website, so you guys don't have to struggle to take notes. Just listen, and you can go back later and grab the notes. And you could always call me about the issues. We'll figure out the best way to structure the fix together. I see far more poorly written addendums than I see well-written addendums. And the only reason these poorly written addendums don't turn into realtor liability is because the transaction closes. Every single time I see transactions boomerang, and it's the poorly written addendum that left ambiguity as to what was supposed to
Mama,
happen.
who is
The same thing happens every time. The seller or the buyer calls me and says, how can we sue the agent? Nobody wants to be part of that. So this whole thing is to keep ourselves out of liability, get the thing to the goalpost as easily as possible with as few strokes. Um, Show of hands, unfortunately, we don't have your screens, but how many know that the risk of loss shifts to the buyer if the parties agree to early occupancy? You got to know your contracts. And so a lot of times realtors want to use early occupancy as a solution to all to all the closing delays. I had this come up last night. In the contract, if you draft an addendum, this is just an example of a poorly written addendum. If you draft an addendum that doesn't contemplate the risk of loss remaining with the seller, if there's a loss in the property, that loss, now the buyer has to take title subject to that loss. And I can give you some horrendous examples, but right here in paragraph 6, if buyer, can you see where the cursor is,
Yeah.
Ryan? If
Yeah, I can see
occupancy
it.
is delivered before closing, buyer assumes all risk of loss to the property from the date of occupancy, shall be responsible and liable for the maintenance from that date, and shall having accepted the property in its as-is condition at the time of closing. So if you don't know these things and you're drafting addendums blindly or with the best of intentions, not knowing the full breadth of the contract, you can really create some problems. I don't want to scare anybody. I'm just saying, read your contract once a month. Read it 3 times today and read it once a month every month. The first part of this discussion is going to be writing effective addendums. The first part of writing effectively, more effectively than I'm communicating right now. So the first part of this discussion is going to be getting the other side to see it your way. This is a two-part um, podcast. We're gonna go do a deep dive on one provision in the contract that I see a lot of realtors not do properly, and at the same time, we're going to explore how to write effectively. This is an actual scenario from a recent transaction. Typical 45-day close. Now it's the walkthrough inspection. Buyers find water in the kitchen cabinet below the drain. How many times has everybody been there?
Been there.
Young couple, yeah. Yeah, I try to pick out stuff that I see in practice that everybody can relate to. Young couple No apparent damage to the cabinet. First home, buyers are really upset, right? To them, this is like the worst thing they've ever seen. To us, we're in the business, no big deal. Agent fires off a text right then and there. You need to fix this right now, or we're not closing tomorrow. What's wrong with this? Show of hands. Anybody? What's wrong with what the agent just did? Quick, somebody say it.
I mean, just really ambiguous. What do they need to fix? What is it?
Worse than that. Thanks, Brian, Ryan. But worse than that, it's in violation of the contract. That sentence violates the contract. There are terms in the contract dictating exactly what should happen. And I hate to get so passionate about this stuff or call you out, Ryan, but like
Yeah.
the main thing is, right, fly up to the highest level you can. The contract dictates the parties' actions at every single step. You show up, there's water in the cabinet, and the agent rifles off this text. You fix this thing or we're not closing. That's not conforming with the terms of the contract. Um, is there a better way? Yes, there's absolutely a better way. The better way is A, know the contract terms. Sorry, Ryan, I didn't mean to call you out.
No, all good. No,
But I'm
it
glad you
was
said what you
ambiguous.
I'm glad you said what you said.
Yeah.
Let's see, we got another show up. Let's see. Know your contract and use IRAC to form your statement to the other party. IRAC is a persuasive writing tool they teach in law school. Law school takes 3 to 4 years. It costs 200 grand. I'm going to give you the summary of $200,000 of learning in 3 years of my life in the next 30 minutes. And I'm telling you, it's going to be 90% of what you need of what I got out of law school. Uh, IRAC is what do they call them? Synonyms, homonyms? Synonyms is where you,
Yep.
or an acronym. Is it an acronym where you take the first
Acronym.
letter? Acronym?
Yep.
So you have issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. Issue, state the facts of what's wrong. Rule, give the rule that controls that issue. Analysis, tie your facts and the law together. Conclusion, conclude the outcome that you want. General rules, name the fact at issue. Name the law or rule that supports your fact. We're going to go over an example of this and it's all going to make sense. Name the rule or law that supports your fact. 90% of the time, the law or rule will be a contract provision. Sometimes it's going to be a state statute, a federal act, a common law, an HOA or a COA rule, a lender guideline, an ordinance, or a tax rule. I know of no other profession that is bound by so many rules as being a realtor. You guys, my heart goes out to you. I've been doing this for 40 years. I've been practicing solo for 20. Every day I learn of a new rule or a new something that throws another wrinkle into the practice of law and into helping you guys. And so you guys are constantly being bombarded with rules and laws. I'm going to say it one more time. I always say this. You don't have to know the rule. You don't have to know the law. You just have to know when there's an issue. If you know there's an issue, we can figure out the rule together. But you guys, doctors aren't bound by as many rules as you guys are, rules and laws. You don't have to sound like a lawyer. When you write this stuff out, don't think about writing like a lawyer. Don't think about legalese. Don't think about sounding fancy. Think about sounding understandable. There was a practice in law a million years ago when people started to write legalese. Now, nobody writes in legalese in law. Everybody writes in an understandable way. Don't think about sounding fancy. Think about sounding understandable. Anyone should be able to pick up your argument and connect the dots and reach your conclusion. A stranger, somebody who knows nothing about the transaction, that's when you know you've written well. Try to limit your sentences to one sentence for each IRAC element. We'll go over that in a minute. Sometimes your analysis may have more than one sentence. Leave emotion out. Don't play the blame game. Your opponent will only get defensive and you will both stray from the point. I watched the debate the other day. Everybody familiar with the Sitzer-Burnett commission lawsuits? We watched a debate the other day in the office, and it was Ketchmark, the plaintiff's attorney, a professional arguer, for lack of a better term, and a broker from Massachusetts. Ketchmark came out and he started arguing his point. They were discussing the future of commissions. It was supposed to be a discussion and debate about the future of commissions and the commission lawsuits and all that good stuff. Ketchmark started talking about the facts and the law, and the broker, not a professional arguer, he was arguing, he was discussing, he was throwing mud, let's just say, he was throwing sticks at Ketchmark. The discussion quickly descended into a mud throwing. Tajay, you were listening. It just quickly descended into this mud throwing. You lost focus. Nobody knew where it was going argument. And what you want to do is you want to narrow, you want to keep on target what you want your other side to see and only talk about, right? And I've seen so many communications between agents where they start talking about other transactions or things that happened earlier in the transactions, or you never did this and I had to do that. And none of that is on point. You want to stay on point. All right, so here's an example of IRAC. Again, we're going to take the mandatory escrow clause in the contract. Who knows there's a mandatory escrow clause? I don't want to call anybody out, but there's a clause in the contract where sellers have to make escrows. Double pause. There's a provision in the contract where sellers have to make escrow deposits. If you're not aware of this, it's a tool available to you. Don't feel bad. Most agents don't know it exists. Many agents don't know it exists. And you guys can tap into it and double down when you need it. All right, so we're going back to that original scenario where they walked through the property and there was water underneath the cabinet. So the buyer and I walked, so this is the application of IRAC. So now you're getting the other side to do things your way. You're not sending off that knee-jerk text. So the issue. This is the first sentence of your paragraph to the other side. The buyer and I walked through 123 Easy Sail Way today and found water under the drain in the kitchen cabinet. One sentence, one fact, nothing personal. Now you're going to point out the rule. You're going to give the rule briefly and succinctly. Sometimes this is easy, sometimes it's not. If it's like a day late in the escrow deposit, that's it. It's a day late in the escrow deposit. This particular rule I picked out is relatively complex and it has a number of provisions in the contract. But again, you're going to give the issue and you're going to give the rule. The
And this is
rule,
for your final walkthrough, Jim, just so everybody knows, because you explain it later, but this was they found water under the cabinet in the final walkthrough.
yep. So we went up to this example. You guys are going to all get this. This is an actual scenario. Young couple walk through, found water underneath the kitchen sink, and the agent's knee jerk was to send off this text saying, we're not closing, you got to fix this. That's the wrong thing to do. Now we're applying IRAC to the facts and rules. So after you've pointed out the issue, now you're going to state the rules. Paragraph 11 of the contract says, except for ordinary wear and tear, casualty, or loss, seller shall maintain the property in the condition as of the effective date, period. That's all from the contract. You don't have to use fancy terms. You just have to lay it all out there. Paragraph 11 also says, if the property is not maintained in this state, to refer to paragraph 9A, which says the seller shall escrow 125% of the estimated repairs. So under the contract, the seller only has two choices, fix or escrow, and there is no allowance for a delay to closing. So now what you've done is you've taken all the other discussions off the table. You've only given them the rules to abide by, which control. There's no emotion, and you've told them there's two choices, and none of them include delaying closing. If you look at the contract, you have the walkthrough provision. So you're doing your walkthrough, and the walkthrough provision, it's important to note, allows multiple walkthroughs. How many times do I get calls from agents where they say, oh no, you got your walkthrough, we're not letting him through again, and they call me or they text me and they say, how do we keep him out of the property a second time? The good answer is you can't. It says right here, walkthrough, on the day prior to closing or on the closing date prior to the time of closing as specified by buyer. Buyer dictates when the walkthrough is. Seller's agents can't. Buyer or buyer's representative may perform a walkthrough and follow-up walkthrough if necessary. Who says it's necessary? The buyer says it's necessary. The seller can't say no. If the buyer says this is necessary, come up with a good reason why you can say it's not, and they'll come up with 10 that say it is. Of the property solely to confirm, so you would think that this is just narrow, right? Solely to confirm all items of personal property are on the property and to verify seller has maintained the property in its as required by the as-is maintenance requirements and has met other contractual obligations. So there you go. It's all spelled out. They can go through for almost any reason they want under the contract, right? Is the personal property there? Have they maintained it in the as-is maintenance requirements or any other term under the contract? What are the as-is maintenance requirements as required under the contract? Good question. See how all this stuff is capitalized? As is, capital M, maintenance requirements. That tells you that somewhere in the contract, that is a defined term. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but whenever you use capitals, you're always referring back to the terms defined in the contract. Where is the as-is maintenance contract? Where are the as-is terms defined? Right here in paragraph 11, except for ordinary wear and tear. This is what we referred to in our letter. Casualty or loss, seller shall maintain the property, including but not limited to lawn, shrubbery, and pool in the condition existing as of the effective date. When you get your parentheses with the quotes, that is how you define as is maintenance requirement. So for all purposes, that is a defined term. See paragraph 9A for escrow procedures, if applicable. What does that mean? So you go up to 9A. Again, this is a complicated one. I picked out one of the more complicated ones in the contract to go over in the class. So you go up to 9A, where we talk about costs at closing. So in 9A, it says closing costs, title insurance, survey, home warranty, cost to be paid by seller. Very last sentence over here. If prior to closing, seller is unable to meet the as-is maintenance requirement as required by paragraph 11, a sum equal to 125% of the estimated cost to meet the as-is maintenance requirements shall be escrowed at closing. If actual costs to meet the as-is maintenance requirements exceed the escrowed amount, seller shall pay the actual cost. Any unused portion of the escrowed amount shall be returned to seller. So you have some conditional terms and you have some positive action terms. Shall, will, those are the positive terms. You have no options. May is a conditional term. You may or you may not. When you see the word shall, they shall escrow. Does anybody have any questions? The water's leaking, the thing has to be repaired, or the seller shall escrow. Nowhere there does it say that that closing will be delayed. I had a transaction recently, and the issue was at the walkthrough, the elevator wasn't operational, Frenchman's Reserve property. The elevator was estimated for repair between $500 and $50,000.
Jim, we do have a question from Wendy.
Yep, I'm going to jump on it in just a second. Thanks, Wendy. $550,000. How much was escrowed? It's got to be a reasonable amount to make the repair. Seller obviously is going to argue for 500. Buyer's going to argue for 50,000. We got a couple more estimates. 500 to 50,000 were the couple more estimates. 50,000 got escrowed. Wendy, what's on your mind?
So if it does state that in the contract, do we still need to write an addendum if it's found at the walkthrough?
So the addendum is going to be something that's not contemplated in the contract. The addendum is going to be to tackle something that's outside the contract. So this is a good example of persuasive writing. If we get to it today, we're already at 24 minutes. We're not going to get to the addendums part today. We'll do the addendums part tomorrow, or we'll do the addendums part next session. But the most important thing right now is just getting the other side to see it your way. In this particular transaction, if they could do the repairs or make the escrow, there won't be an addendum. But let's just imagine they can't do the repairs and they don't want to do the escrow and everybody agrees. Buyers don't want to make repairs after closing. If they want to delay the closing a couple of days, then there would be an addendum to make the repairs happen. Does that make sense, Wendy? But
Yes,
in this,
thank you.
yep, but in this particular transaction, if they do one of the two things they have to do, then there would be no addendum. So we've pointed out the rule, we've cited the issue, we pointed out the rule, now we're going to do the analysis. This is the art, right? Everybody can find the provisions in the contract. We just walked through this one. This is a complicated one, but here's the art. Matching the rule and the facts. So, and again, you guys, this does not have to look like a lawyer did it. All you got to do is lay it out there. There was no leak on the effective date. The inspection report was done 3 days after the effective date. Page 11 discusses the plumbing. Page 12 has a picture of the kitchen sink drain, and there is no mention of a leak or visible water. The contract says the seller shall maintain the property in the condition it was in on of the effective date, with the only exception being ordinary wear and tear. And all would agree a recent active leak is not ordinary wear and tear. I have also provided a plumber's estimate for the repairs. So you jump to the next step, you're ahead of the ball. If they don't make the repairs, here's the estimate that we can make the escrow over. The conclusion. Here's the real art. This is where you're gonna make your points right with your client, because this is where they're gonna go, yeah, you stuck it to them, right? As the goal isn't to stick it to them, the goal is to get your goal. As the closing is tomorrow, please let me know when the seller has fixed the leak so we may reinspect as provided in paragraph 12B, or send me an email with an escrow receipt for the mandatory deposit. You always want to have your CTA. Your call to action. That's how you end every communication. What's the next step you want from the other side? This transaction, and then you remind them nicely. This transaction shall close on time, and the seller agreed to these duties when they signed the contract. Something everybody has to remember is when you know the contract and you pull those terms out, you can gracefully remind the other side, your client already agreed to this. When they signed the contract, they already agreed they were going to do the mandatory escrow or make the repairs. So the discussion isn't, are they going to do it? The discussion is, how much are they going to escrow, or can they get the repairs done on time? Again, it's never the best idea. I always like closings to happen on time. Weird stuff happens when closings don't happen on time. I always like to figure out a way to make things happen on time. Tajay blew me away the other day. He had this closing. I thought I had all the secret sauce and we were going to get this thing closed, but there was going to be one holdover issue, and Tajay pulled the rabbit out of his hat, got the thing to close on time, and all the issues were resolved at the table. Super impressed. The student has become the master. My hat's off to you, buddy. But the goal is that the thing closes on time. In all events, you want to make that happen. If you can't make that happen, right? And I never like to see sellers working on buyers' property. And whenever you're doing stuff as a holdover and you're having work happen at the other person's expense, at the other party's expense, they never do it the way the other side wants. A credit at closing is always your best friend.
Yes.
One more time, a credit at closing is always your best friend. I cannot tell you how many addendums I see where people are sending them over. Oh, and then the seller's going to do this after closing and do that after closing. Never do that. So what do you got? I see a hand up at New Path. What's going on, Christian?
That's actually me, Jim. So just a question that came in via the chat, just something to verify. So when they see the word shall, that is a must. That's an affirmative.
Shall, shall and
Considered
will
a
are
must.
yep. Shall and will are the two affirmative statements. Whenever you see may, and I see realtors use words, that don't have specific actions, and may is one of them, but will and shall, those are things you have to do. They're affirmative action words. Did that answer the question? Or I was in the chat, so if anybody has any more questions about that, you always want, I like the word, personally, I like shall better than will. It's just a style thing, but I like the word shall the best. Very important note, a little known contract rule, section 9A, 142 of the contract requires, that's the mandatory escrow provision. This is a twofold podcast, you're learning two techniques at once, powerful writing, but you're also using another tool, mandatory escrows. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I see so many agents. And actually, you know, I do a lot of transactions. I've overlooked it too, but it's there as a tool to be used. All right. When you're writing your IRAC statement, it doesn't have to be long and flowery, and you're not going to use the word issue or rule in the front of the sentence. You're just going to do it, you know, in your head. Here you can use assuming language like as you're aware or as you would agree when you're writing persuasively. So here I use a little trick, and all would agree a recent active leak is not ordinary wear and tear. All right, all might not agree, but you're going to say it anyways because you want to get them down that path. And I think all would agree that a recent active leak is not ordinary wear and tear. There's no great law you're going to find on that. There's a ton of cases, but you're not going to go that deep in the rabbit hole. But another thing is when you're starting the relationship, refrain from using assuming language. And I see realtors come out of the box all the time with their initial communications with the other side with this assuming language, and it just puts the other person on their heels, like, as you know, right? Who likes to read that? As you know, when it's something you don't know about. Refrain from doing that stuff. Don't do that right out of the box. You're already setting that's just social stuff. That's not legal stuff. Using the exact words in the contract is always a good idea. You don't have to quote it. If you just make a simple reference to line 127 or paragraph 9B or wherever you want to get them, just save them some time from surfing around the contract. You know, you'll see lawyers all the time pull out provisions in the contract. You don't have to do that. You just have to say, as 9B says, you know, the property has to be in XYZ condition. Always use the defined terms. So we talked about it earlier in the podcast. You want to make sure you're using the capitalized terms in your writing and, more importantly, in your addendums. If you get in the habit of using the defined terms, you will forego so many ambiguities. So like these little things that you know, when you use the word property, capital P, when you're talking about your property. When you're talking about contingent property, not the subject property, that's lowercase p. When you're talking about your closing date and you have multiple properties and there's contingent properties, capital C, capital D is the closing date of your property. Lowercase c is going to be the closing date of the other property, the contingent property. These are just little things to keep in mind whenever you think about the financing provisions. There are specific defined terms in the financing provision of paragraph 8. Use the exact terms from that paragraph and the other side won't be scratching their head. I can't tell you how many times I hear people refer to the financing provisions with all kinds of helter-skelter language. It just creates ambiguity and confusion. Don't play the blame game. This kind of goes into that don't start by using assuming language right off the bat. Don't play the game where you're already putting the person on their heels or you're bringing up other issues that happened earlier in the transaction. You're just laser focused on that one thing that gets you to that one goal. As soon as you start bringing in other stuff, people get defensive and it just starts to look like that show we watched the other day with the Seitzer-Burnett Commission discussions, and everybody loses focus. You don't want to lose focus. And this is most important, and the one that everybody forgets. End your statement. I don't care whether you're writing an IRAC. I don't care whether it's a quick text. I don't care whether it's a big issue or a little issue. End all your statements with a CTA, a call to action. The other side should know, after you've communicated with them, exactly what you expect them to do. Everybody should be clear as to the next step. Forget about writing persuasively. Forget about everything I told you. If you do nothing else as a takeaway from this podcast, end your communication with the next exact thing you expect the other side to do, and that'll be the most effective takeaway. If you remember it, think in the back of your head, IRAC, issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. And if you can keep sometimes I even find myself writing texts in the shortest things in an IRAC format. And the one takeaway from law school that I still use is IRAC.
Yes, it's good. I mean, I just say this, I just want to add this, my clients, when I'm working with them, I always put an action items, which is a CTA, right? And like, okay, yep, we need to put in your application for this lender. We need to make sure the escrow deposit is at this time. You always put that up in front and center with them at every part of communication. It's a great reminder, Jim. It's awesome.
So if you guys aren't aware, this came up the other day, and I just want to mention it before we let go. So in the new contract form, it's been out for a couple of years now, but in the newer contract version, the seller has a right to know what's going on with the loan at all times. The seller has a right to know the status of the loan. So the seller has a right, let's see, buyer upon written request, if within the loan approval, if buyer is able to loan approval. Let's see, loan processing, loan approval, fully informed. Okay. Buyer shall, upon written request, keep seller and broker fully informed about the status of buyer's mortgage loan approval and loan processing appraisal and loan approval, including any property-related conditions of loan approval. You guys use this contract to your favor. Know what it says. I had a transaction recently the other day. The seller says to me, it's a big sale, several $1 million sale. We were having lunch the other day, and the seller says to me, do you know if my loan got approved? And they have a high-end agent. And the agent does, as you can imagine, nothing but big deals. And I said, what do you mean? Do I hear if I heard anything from your lender? He says, do you know if the loan's been approved? I said, why hasn't your agent been reaching out to the mortgage broker continuously saying, has the buyer gotten in all the documents that they need? You have all the things you need to approve the loan. You can ask the carte blanche question, is the loan approved? The lender is always going to say the same thing, but you can use the contract. My point that I'm trying to make is you can use the contract to get all the little things you need no one's in suspense as to the last minute. So one of the stipulations in the contract is that the buyer is going to use their best effort and good faith to diligently get the documents requested by the lender back to the lender in a timely manner. So what would you ask the lender in that situation? You'd write a very effective contract. You've read a very effective communication that says, it doesn't have to say pursuant to, but you just want to say as provided in or whatever, line 106 of the contract. Has the buyer been providing you everything you need when you need it to get this loan approved? The lender can't not answer. You've already told them, here's a copy, here's the provision in the contract. The lender can't not answer. So we strayed a little bit off the concept of persuasive writing and IRAC, but I think you can see, you can use all these little tips. I mean, this is all lawyers do. All these little tricks, these little tips, these little hacks, if you want to get the goals that you guys want to get with less effort. It all boils down to using the contract and writing effectively. And if you write to the lender, what's going on with the loan, that's a nothing, right? And the lender might not even answer. But if you copy everybody and you tell them, hey, line 106 of the contract, consistent with line 106 of the contract, has the buyer been getting you everything you need when you ask for it in a timely manner, and you copy everybody in the deal, everybody's got to comply. Any questions?
That's great. Jeff Stewart had a quick question, Jim. Jeff, you want to go ahead?
You're
still on mute. You're on mute. There you go, Jeff. Yeah.
Did it?
There we go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I had a closing last week over in Naples, and it was clear to close probably 3 weeks prior to the closing date. I mean, we were way ahead of schedule. And we sent the loan approval to the seller's agent. And the seller's agent said, this does not say final approval. Well, part of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is you have to do a VOE within 36 hours or 60 hours of closing date. And then you have to do a refresh of the credit.
Yeah.
And I kept telling, and the seller's agent is like you said, she was a heavy hitter. I don't know if she was just being a pain in the ass, or what are your thoughts on that? I mean, Supreme's a top 10 mortgage company in the United States. That's what we use.
Well, I would say that there's a surprising number of, I'm not sure exactly what your question is, but I would tell you that a lot of agents you think are being hard asses are really just being not knowledgeable. I see that so many times. There's also another provision in the contract under the new FAR form, and we'll do a whole section on the financing provision because there are some nuances in there. But there are reasons to not deliver the loan approval document. You really just want to send a letter from the buyer that says we got or didn't get the loan. And we'll do a deep dive on all that stuff, like what you want to transmit and what you don't want to transmit and why. But I would almost guarantee you that more so, if you want to reframe your question, I'll try and answer it more precisely, but more so than often, I see people just agents, even heavy hitter agents, just not knowing. Oh, and in my transaction where I said to the seller, has your agent been staying on top of the mortgage broker on the loan? I told them what provision to, I said, don't mention my name, but just tell the seller's agent what provision of the contract allows them to contact the mortgage broker directly and in writing ahead of time. And the seller's agent had no idea. And if I told you they sold, millions and millions of dollars of property over the last couple of years, you'd be surprised how many people don't know this stuff.
I mean, that was pretty much my thought process. I just kind of wanted to get it confirmed. I thought you'd be a good person to ask.
Yeah. I mean, the verification of employment is huge, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want them waiting to the last minute, but you want to make sure they've at least done it initially. And you don't want to be in the lender's face the day before closing. What do you mean you don't have this stuff? It just doesn't make you look good as a seller's agent. It doesn't make you look good as a buyer's agent. You got to, and we've said this before, this is another real issue I see going on. You not only have to know your lane and do your job, you got to know the other agent's lane and do their job. When you get down to this homeowners association and condominium association stuff, you got to know your lane and you got to know the lane of the other agent. So you're doing them both, and you just look like a shining star. And you look like a shining star to both parties, the buyer's agent and seller's agent. I mean, to buyer and seller. I've seen buyers flip and do transactions with sellers agents and later transactions because the sellers agents were so strong in the principal transaction.
Thank you.
You bet. Anybody else have any questions?
It's great, Jim.
All right. Ryan, give your pitch for RealTrade, the coolest platform that doesn't fleece agents and gives them the best, shortest route to double dip.
No, thanks, Jim. I mean, thank you for this very intensive, some great rules and some great, language that we can add to our addendums and be persuasive, right? And communicate, especially with the other side. And it's, like you said, $200,000 of law school here in 30 minutes. Pretty awesome, Jim, that we're able to add this value to the agents. So yeah, I tell everybody, check out RealTrade. I literally developed RealTrade from an agent perspective. I was tired of having my listings on Zillow and not being the point of contact and losing leads from all my hard work, right? With all the photos and all the, the golf outings and dinners, right? That I wasn't getting these leads from my hard work from my own listings. So that's number one for agents. Check out RealTrade. We can get you some free leads. And then we have the big social component. And the best part is this is free for agents, guys. This is free for you because we have the social component to connect with awesome service providers like Jim on RealTrade, like Jeff Stewart with Supreme, all these great lenders that we have on the platform. You can connect with them. So we also have other service providers like solar companies, inspectors, appraisers, all those contacts. So it's a free service for you guys. So you get free leads and then that help you facilitate business as well. So check that out. But I do want to give a big shout out to Jim. Jim, thank you for hosting this bi-weekly webinar with me. And if you haven't yet, guys, check out New Path Title and their awesome closing software, Title Leap. It's like a free contract coordinator for agents. I use it on all my transactions, keeps track of all your drop dead dates, and it's free for agents. And of course, another thing which Jim's going to talk about is Title Advance. I use it on every single deal now, especially on listing appointments. And it gives you an overview if there's any title issues, so you know going in what you're dealing with. So it's great too, even when you go get a listing and you want to make sure nothing pops up that can delay a closing. So go ahead, Jim. Why don't you speak
Real quick, Title Advance, everybody can get one, free to agents. You just go to titleadvance.io. You click on free title advance, and you're going to get a report back to you, which shows what's on title, what has to be paid off. Is equities getting skinny? I see it more and more, or sellers just aren't aware. You show up for a listing appointment, sellers aren't aware that they have to pay off that home equity line of credit. We see it all the time. Title advance is going to reveal all that. And then if you're a buyer, so it's going to help you win the listing appointment. It's going to help you set expectations. But then as you get closer to closing, it's going to streamline the closing process because you can take care of the problem stuff right up front. If you're making offers, it's going to help you only make offers on clean properties. If for some reason you find a title advance that has issues and we talk about it, you can text me 24/7. You can order a title insurance commitment. I will credit you back for this at the closing. Title insurance commitment is our roadmap that we use to close your property. It's the actual tool the title agent uses. So it's going to cost, I think it's $150, but when we close the deal, I'll pay it back to you. Or if the seller pays it, I'll pay a credit to the seller. You can also go on New Path Title. You can get a hold of me 24/7, clicking here. You can check out Title Advance here, and you can get a glimpse of our closing software. Again, if you want to order a title advance or a title commitment, they're here. And then it's just Title Leap is the software that we provide you guys. It's really easy. My wife is the most software adverse person on the planet, and she swears by it. She loves it. So I want you guys to have an awesome day. I hope you can use some of these tools that we've shared with you. I want you to go out and kill it. It's nice to see a little upswing in the market. Inman Connect occurred. It's important to say the date. So what's today? The 30th of January, 2024. Inman Connect occurred last week, and the general consensus at Inman was many markets are looking much better. This is the toughest period we've seen in the last 30 years. So if you're still an agent and you're here, that's a great sign because we have things looking up to look forward to. Text me 24/7, anything you want to talk about in the future, and we will go over writing the addendums, the powerful addendums in the future at our next show.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. Thanks everybody for attending. Appreciate it.
You guys have a great day. Thanks.
Bye.